What's up, guys? Today I have the joy of having a personal friend of mine. Her name is Jennifer Olwelt, and she is a mental health attorney. She is my personal friend. We've known each other for 15 years. We talk all things about the law, how we met, what she does for mental health in Arizona. She's a huge advocate for it, and she protects patients every single day. You guys are definitely going to enjoy this episode because Jen is one of my crazier friends and she's super entertaining. And so I think you're going to love what you see. All right, Jen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Give me a story of something that happened to you at the Court of Appeals when you were working there as a clerk that was memorable and stuck in your mind.
So I did 2 tours at the Court of Appeals, and we can maybe talk about why I was on my second tour later. But the Court of Appeals is pretty boring. It's like it's like, in the most lovely way, it's boring.
Right.
It's a lot of reading and very adult professional people. So it was a little bit tough for me to fit in there. But it was so boring that the most exciting thing I think that happened to me was that I got shit on by a bird on picture day on my second tour. I totally forgot it was picture day, and I came in a little hungover, and it was, all these new kids that had just graduated from law school, and they were so excited to be at the Court of Appeals in this coveted position. And I'm on my second tour, and I'm like disgruntled and have been a lawyer for a couple of years. And I'm like, gather round, children. Let me tell you about the outside world. And I totally forgot it was.
That.
Yeah. I was like, let me tell you about day drinking. You don't have to stay up late to enjoy a great buzz. Like, you can do that during the daytime. So yeah, I was like picture day, and there's all these new kids who are like in awe of me because I give zero shits about anything at this point. And I had totally forgotten it's picture day. My hair's like in a greasy ponytail, when you do that like salvage thing where you baby powder it and hope it's not too chunky.
Day 7.
Totally, day 7. I mean, it was like, I was afraid that then we had to be in like a group picture. So I'm like, definitely my neighbors can smell it. And then we're like walking across the street and I get shit on it. I'm like, that's really kind of the piece de resistance. And you can see as I'm telling people next to me in the group picture that they're laughing because I'm telling them the story. And yeah, that was probably the most exciting thing that happened while I was there. It was very uneventful, but I learned a lot of stuff. And then of course I met great friends like you. So that helps.
Thank you very much. Well, actually, I've heard that in the Russian culture, being shit on by a bird is actually really good luck.
It's supposed to be good luck, right?
Yeah.
So like, and I don't know if that's just to alleviate the pain of being shit on by a bird. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, it's good luck. Like if it rains on your wedding day, like, is that really good luck, or is that just like a waste of a ton of money if you had an outdoor wedding planned? Do you know what I mean? I'm not sure.
Let's make it a positive. Negative into a positive.
Yeah, I'm like, I love that optimism for whoever came up with that. Thank you for making me feel better. I mean, it's gross. Like bird shit's super gross too. It's like sticky. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so you're in mental health, and how did you get into that?
So I think when I first went to law school, I thought I had an MBA, and I was like, I'm going to have this like really fancy job working for like some big company, and I'm going to wear high heels and pencil skirts and just like rule the world. And then I worked at the Center for Disability Law as an internship one summer. Okay. And there was this gal I worked with. I mean, oh my God, you guys, she drove me around in this car, this like tiny 1980 something. And I'm not that old. So like, I mean, I'm old, but this was in like, 2000s. She had this 80s car. We would drive to the state hospital for stuff, and she would, during the summer, smoke in the car with the windows up.
Oh my God.
The whole time. But she really loved what she did. And we worked with people with mental illness. Most of them are people that are recipients of Access or our state's Medicaid program here in Arizona.
Right.
And I remember one time there was a person who had called generally, I can give some general information, and he was worried about his daughter not getting her medication. And he called us to try to help her get her medication. She'd been a totally typical kid. She was at one of the state schools, and she had a mental health break. And mental illness sometimes sets in your 20s. And so he had called us to say she's not getting her meds, she's not doing well. And then the next thing we heard was a message from him saying, my daughter stabbed me. She's been arrested. I'm in the hospital. Can you please make sure she gets her meds?
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, this population, the only people that they have are their parents, and what happens when their parents are gone. And they have this thing that they can't help that, like, to me is the most human thing. How you interact with other people is the most human part about you. And that mental illness interferes with that. And I thought, oh my gosh, someone has to help these people. And the Center for Disability Law is a program, or is a federal program that uses money from federal grants to provide free legal services to people with disabilities. So that was one of my very first jobs out of law school too. So I interned there. And then, again, I thought I was going to be making lots of money and wearing pencil skirts. And instead I wore Target shirts and flip-flops because I was making like $55,000 a year at a nonprofit. But it was, of the work that I've done, like some of the most rewarding, like the way that people thank you in a way that they are able to do. There's something about that that I really feel like can't be beat. So that's how I ended up in mental health. And I've bounced around in different areas, but it started with the Center for Disability Law. Kudos to anyone who wants to do nonprofit stuff. I got to work with some really cool people at that job too. Remember when I was going to prison all the time?
Yes. Talk about that.
So
what were those visits all about?
So the Center for Disability Law, the ACLU Prison Project, we're working together, and this is a lawsuit that is in settlement now in Arizona. But it started with trying to making sure that the prisons provide adequate mental health care to inmates. And as a result of that, I got to see a lot of what the prison system looks like in Arizona, and in particular what it's like for people with mental illness. So it was very interesting. I will say that the best love letter, and pretty much only love letter I ever got, was from a prisoner who saw me in prison one time.
What did it say?
Oh, he was like he was not a client. He was not part of any of this other stuff. He just was working the visitation room when I went there.
Oh my gosh.
And so like he strikes up a conversation and he's like, I'm getting out soon. And I'm like, that's great. You should get some services. Well, he was asking for my information. I think he wanted like a date before he got out. Like,
some services.
I mean, he wanted some services for sure, but I don't think it was of the type that I would be legally allowed to provide as his attorney. Yeah.
When you work for the public and you have so many clients, or you interact with so many different people, you always have to be careful, because
especially as women, we have a whole different.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
I mean, the person most likely to kill me is my husband, and he sleeps right next to me, so. That's just like statistically speaking. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Statistically, yes, that is true. That is true.
I mean, I have some good friends.
He's a lovely man.
His moments. I did ask him who I thought would win in a fight, and he's a black belt.
Oh, really? I didn't know that about him.
I know, it's surprising, right?
Go John.
I know.
Yeah.
But so that makes me nervous. Because I feel like size-wise, I could take him. He's a black belt.
So we met at the Court of Appeals.
Yes. First tour.
First tour. We'll talk about the second tour in a minute. But tell me about the first tour. What did you do there? What did you like about working at the Court of Appeals?
So my first tour was like a fake tour, I would say, because like the real coveted positions are the after law school positions. Okay. So the really fancy law students, the ones who are like at the top of their class, right? As you know, they all apply for these judicial clerkships. And it's like with the hierarchy, like a Court of Appeals is good, Supreme Court is better.
Right.
And so there's just like this air of importance around all of it. Like we could get to the second floor, the Court of Appeals. We could not get to the third floor, Supreme Court. Like we did not have clearance for that. So the first time I was there, I was in a cubby in this judge's office, and he was an alumni from my law school. So I reached out to him, and he was super approachable and really easy. And he was like, yeah, you can come intern for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing ever. Like, I had these terrible grades first semester. Like I thought, this is the tits, right?
I'm in.
Yeah. So I sat at this little desk and I did Anders. Did you do Anders?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The
Talk about
Anders
that.
appeals. So they're people who are in prison and you get an automatic right to appeal. So it's called an Anders appeal because a lawyer can review it and say, I don't think there's anything to see here.
Right.
But then the court on appeal has to review the entire record. So you're reviewing all of this record from this case.
Right.
So that tour was pretty, I would say, I mean, I was scared to death. I was like a second year law student. Every time I would like see a judge, I was like, oh, a judge, because it was
They're in the black robe.
Yes. I mean,
they have an air about themselves. Like when you see them walking down the halls and they're wearing their black robes, like it's like, wow, like it's an air of importance.
It was like church.
Yeah.
So because I grew up Catholic. I don't go anymore, but I went as a kid and I went to, I think they call them like a charismatic Catholic church where they had like girl altar servers.
Oh, wow.
So when you set up the altar for communion and stuff, it's very similar to how you set up the dais when you are going to do oral arguments.
Right.
So there's like a secret room behind there where you get them fresh water.
Yeah.
Because
there's the good water.
The good water.
You don't give them
there's good water and there's bad water back there.
Water.
The bad water is for the lawyers, just so you know.
Yeah. Bring your own water, lawyers.
Bring your own water because
argue.
if you're doing an oral argument, you're getting straight from the faucet Phoenix water.
Yeah.
But then there's good water for the judges and you set it all up and it's like, it was very sacrosanct. Is that the right word?
It's like a ritual.
Is that the right placement of that word?
I mean, I'm going to have to look that one up.
Okay.
I mean, you stumped
That
me.
sounded
You
good there.
Stumped me. I will defer to you.
The first tour, scared to death the whole time. The other thing you have to do is start the clock for the oral arguments.
Oh, that was scary for me too.
So
I was like, oh my God.
So
Yeah.
stressful.
Yeah.
It's all recorded.
Hey, you start that clock.
Yeah, they start the clock.
20 minutes.
And then, because then the worst is when the lawyers were like, I would like to reserve time. And I'm like, well, you want to reserve time? What if I didn't stop this exactly right?
I know.
And the clocks didn't always match because there's a clock at the dais and each of the lawyers have a clock because you only get, I don't know, what is
20
it?
minutes.
20 minutes for your oral arguments.
Yeah.
The other thing that
A
I
lot
thought,
of pressure on us. And we weren't even doing the arguing. Can you
honest
imagine?
to God, I would be sweating profusely.
Yeah.
Being like, oh God, I don't want to mess up the timing on the oral argument.
Yeah.
Which of course these lawyers are probably like, I mean, that's,
We hope you mess up the timing because I want more time.
I want more time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So the first tour was very like, the way it should have been, very respectful, very, not that I wasn't respectful during the second tour. I just, the like magic of it had gone away.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. The Oz. You saw what Oz was.
Yeah, I knew what was behind the curtain because I'd gone and practiced law. And when I went back the second time, it was because things had significantly changed.
What happened that caused you to go back the second time? Because usually people do a clerkship for 1 year,
And then they grow
maybe
up.
2 years. But why did you go back?
So I went back because I needed a job.
Okay.
Because I worked at the Center for Disability Law. It was really awesome. I worked with a lot of different state agencies. I got to go to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which talk about like religious experience. It was, I don't know now in retrospect if it was as big as it seemed to me at the time.
Right.
But the room, it's like all marble, the most marble ever. I went to the San Francisco one, the San Francisco
Ninth Circuit.
Yeah,
Wow.
but I too bad they didn't hear it in Hawaii, but they heard it in San Francisco. And so I go there, and it's these three judges. One of them I thought was asleep the entire time because his eyes were closed, and it's a life appointment. So like you're there forever.
He's not going anywhere.
And then there was a new appointee who like asked questions, but I felt like the dais was like it couldn't have been 12 feet high, but it felt like it was.
Right.
And that was like as close to a religious experience as you could. So I worked that job and I got to do all kinds of cool stuff. And then I went and worked at the Arizona State Hospital, which is Arizona's only mental health hospital.
Wow.
There are a lot of other states that have a lot more beds, meaning like a lot more placements for people in mental health, like high level care.
Are we on the high end of providing great care, or are we on the low end?
So that's a complex question.
Okay.
But if you're just talking about the state hospital, I think the state hospital does a pretty good job. These are people who are really sick. there's a civil side and a forensic side. So a forensic is who's there pursuant to some criminal pathway through the criminal justice system.
Right.
The civil patients are there, usually through a court-ordered civil treatment. But there's not, there's really not that many beds. There's not a lot of people that are in that high level of care in Arizona. Arizona does a lot to try to get people out in the community. But I worked that job, and there was they started doing a lot of news reports. It was ABC 15. And some of what the hospital has is public records. And I was working at the hospital as the chief quality officer.
How did you get that job?
Because I had done, there was a lot of rules changing. So there was this push to integrate healthcare where you could get mental and physical care in the same place. Wow. So that was innovative. So there was this big rule process. That's really boring too. You sit and you talk about rules. But for some reason, I was very powerful in those conversations because I came in as a patient.
Imagine that.
I came in as this patient advocate and I was like, you need to put this rule in and this rule in. So I had at that point sort of caught the eye of some folks downtown, and we had started talking about places where I could be interested in. And so the director of the Department of Health Services at that time was like, hey, we could use someone who knows mental health like you do at the state hospital. You just worked on all these rules things. Would that ever be something you're interested in? And I interviewed and got the job. And it was really cool because at the time it was a female CEO, a female chief medical officer, a female chief nursing officer, a female chief quality officer.
That's probably never happened in the state of Arizona before.
Well, no, but when we all left at the same time. So I worked at that job for a while. They started doing all of these news stories that, he did a public records request. And I can understand how when you get public records and you don't have any context, you can come to your own conclusions. And that's what happened.
Right.
I mean, I never would have ever stayed at a place that I thought was not taking care of people.
Correct.
But that was kind of the allegations that were being made. And so there was a house cleaning, I guess I would call it, and all 4 of those women officers were fired. And
how'd you find out about that? How did they tell you that this was going to happen to you?
Well, they don't tell you ahead of time. So I just had an invite on my calendar, and 2 people came into my office and said, we don't need your services anymore. And then the worst part was my friend, who's a public defender, called me and she's like, so I heard about what happened. And I'm like, how the hell do you know? And she's like, it was on the news. So there's my picture on the news saying that I got fired.
Gosh.
And I think that was 2015. At that point, I was like,
How long had you been practicing at that point as an attorney?
So at that point, I actually wasn't practicing as an attorney, right? Because I was working at the state hospital.
Right. You need your license for that.
Yeah. So I became inactive at that time because I wasn't providing any legal services. They had their own lawyers.
Okay.
I was just trying to help with compliance and that sort of thing. So I'd only worked there for a year and a half, and I didn't know what to do. So the day I got fired, I called the judge that I worked for and I said, I can't believe this just happened. I don't know what to do.
How was he when he heard this from you? Was he helpful?
Right away. He said, I'll call you right back. And he called me back in 20 minutes and he was like, I have a job for you starting in July.
Wow.
So I went and worked for him for 6 weeks again. And that's when I started the second tour.
Wow.
And by then I was curmudgeon-y, I guess. I was just cranky and I'm like,
my face has been on the news.
Yeah. I'm like, you really you know what? I really empathize with so many people who've been laid off, especially recently with all this COVID stuff. But once you're fired and it's on the news with the photo, there's precious little that can bother you in the professional world. So it sucked at the time, obviously.
Right.
But the fact that those people still thought I could be good at being a lawyer was really refreshing, I think, and helped build
confidence.
Yeah. And then also gave me a place to hide while I was like, what am I going to do now?
Right.
What do I want to do? What do I want to do? I have all of this. I had started to collect this knowledge about mental health stuff in different ways.
Right.
When I worked at the Center for Disability Law, I learned about Medicaid and services and how we provide for that population. I learned about...
It's a complex system.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean... I think in Arizona, I think you asked earlier if we do it well in Arizona, and I do think we do it well in Arizona.
That's good to know.
But I would say that, it's always interesting in mental health stuff. So yeah,
Right.
the firing thing was probably the worst I have ever felt.
Right.
I broke up with
Professionally.
my boyfriend.
Yeah. Everything
It
just
was
starts unraveling.
tragic.
And I mean, you're almost 10 years out from that. And now you're looking back at it and like, look at how great your life is now and what you're doing now professionally and
Yeah,
how
totally
you
different.
help people. And so it's like, talk a little bit about that. Talk about how at the time you probably thought you're never going to dig yourself out of this hole.
Yeah, for sure.
Ever. And where you're at now and how you're almost looking back and saying, geez, I just really made a full circle moment.
It took a lot of self-talking and a lot of mental health reflection on my own to sort of get over it.
Right.
And I worked another job after. I worked at the Court of Appeals for a while, and I worked for a judge, and she said, will you work with me to the end of retirement? And I
that's
said,
great.
sure. And then I started looking for another job, and I worked for a healthcare company at that point, so not a lawyer again. And I worked there not for very long. I was doing their Medicaid proposal stuff. And I liked what I was doing, but it was not great. And I got laid off. And after I got laid off, I'm like, F this. Like, I'm done. Like, there are plenty of lawyers who are complete idiots who work for themselves. And
Right.
if those people can do it, so can I. I remember one of our friends, now ex-boyfriends,
Okay.
I went to him to talk to him about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And he was doing like DUI federal stuff. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I went to him and I'm like, tell me a little bit about what you do. Like, how do you find your business? How do you run your business?
Right.
And I was, he's giving me advice. And at the end of it, I was like, so if you can do this, I can do this. And he said, I don't feel like that's a compliment. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not.
It wasn't intended to be one.
It
I'm just
wasn't.
thinking out loud.
Yeah. And at that point, I'm like, forget this. I'm not Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm not going to be in the middle of the night, like changing the world. I'm over that. Like I tried and,
Right. It's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. And if you're vocal and you're strong in your convictions, it's
Right.
really hard to exist in those places because there's a lot of times that you have to compromise. And that's not something I was super great at.
Right. Well, good for you.
It took a while to figure that out, but ultimately it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to work for anybody else again. I don't want to get fired. I don't want to get laid off. I don't want to get drug tested. I don't want to get
None of that.
none of that. I don't want to
Right.
have to hire people. I don't want to manage people. I'm a terrible manager. I don't want to do any of that. And so I started asking around and I realized I'm not Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm not Einstein. I'm not reinventing the wheel. There is somebody who's already made all the mistakes that I make. And that was probably the most adult moment of my life, is really being like, the hard way is great because you learn the lesson, but yeah.
I've learned my lessons
Yeah.
in a short time.
We've talked about that too, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's
Right.
somebody has already done all of this. And it might be somebody who's not nearly as clever or thoughtful or cautious as we are. So.
Right. Absolutely. So it's almost like you went through some hardships that taught you what you don't want to do, which
Yeah.
then lended you to figure out what you do want to do.
And sometimes that's a weird way to back into it.
Right.
And not maybe, I always tell people when they're like, oh, I don't know what kind of job I want. Well, think about the intangibles. Do you want to work from home? Like, do you want to wear pencil skirts and high heels? Do you want to wear a
don't wanna wear a
pantsuit,
pencil
a
skirt
power
anymore.
suit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I can't these days, but I did.
We rocked them at the Court of
I
Appeals.
did. We did. Yeah. And then we went to happy hour downtown with all the other working people. I mean, that was what was so fun about that experience.
Right. You probably feel like you're checking all the boxes professionally. You're doing good for the community. You're staying true to your professional roots on like why you're in this job to begin with,
Yeah.
So,
and I think I'm pretty good at it. Like, I'd like
Right.
to think that I am. One of the other things I learned is getting fired on the news is like, you really need to be honest about your strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes we're not as willing to admit what our strengths are because we have imposter syndrome. I mean, because we
Right.
feel like we can't just be like, yeah, I'm really good at this,
Right.
Yeah, we are really good at this stuff that we do. And you're very cautious and careful. I think that it feels right now like I'm doing what makes sense for me. When I first started working on my own, I was doing appeals contract stuff. I was just finding work where I could. And after I sat with the guy with the iPad and the Hawaiian shirt, he said, actually, I could use some help covering hearings. And that's how that relationship started. And now I've been working with him for 5 years, and I have a few other clients here and there. I told him he's the longest relationship I've ever had with a man besides my dog. R.I.P. Mango. Did I do
Mango,
that the right way?
Mango.
That felt wrong right away. Jeez Louise, I'm out of practice.
Mango was the best dog.
He was
the best dog ever. So the practice of the law is pretty heavy.
It can be.
So especially with your area, mental health, that's a pretty heavy topic that you have to deal with on the daily. What do you like to do for fun when you're not lawyering?
So I just started reading books again because after law school, I couldn't read books. I used to read for enjoyment, but law school made reading so unenjoyable that I couldn't read any books.
Same.
I can't tell you what I've read. I've read so many books lately. Thank God it keeps track, or I'd be reading the same shit over and over again. The other thing I do is I watch like straight garbage trash TV. Like last weekend, so my husband was out of town and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I got sucked into like 7 hours of Hoarders.
Okay, tell me about that.
What I'm most embarrassed about is that I ate during Hoarders, which like if you can eat food while you're watching Hoarders, like you have a problem. Like they're like picking up rats and shit, and I'm like eating my pita jungle.
Picking up rats?
Oh, have you watched Hoarders?
I've never seen Hoarders.
Oh
I think
my God,
it's
friend.
Like, I would get grossed out maybe.
You would definitely get grossed out,
Okay.
but it is like, okay, so the best episode was with Orrin, Lauren, and Roy. And Orrin and Lauren were like these 70-year-old twins in Utah that lived with their younger brother, Roy, and they had hoarded everything. And it goes back and forth. Wow. You've really never seen this show?
I've never seen it. I know of it, but I've never seen it because I think that it will like skeeve me out. And be
I think partly why I'm obsessed with it is because it's like there's a mental health piece to it, right?
Oh, for sure. I can see why you would want to see that.
There was like a mental health piece to it. So I'm like, the neighbors are like, get your crap out of the yard. And they're like all calling the police. And then and with Orrin and Lauren and Roy, the landlord came in and they're like, we're going to have to condemn the house.
So are they now hoarding from not only inside of the house, but it's going outside too?
Oh my God, yeah.
It's exploding.
You would die. I can't even imagine. It actually, maybe you shouldn't watch it because it might just like put you right in over the edge. I mean, so that I got sucked into. I don't always watch that, but I just was like bored last weekend and I really got sucked into that. But this stuff, and this is really funny because these are shows that my husband also watches with me, so I'm not allowed to watch them alone.
He's going to get mad that you've disclosed this, right?
No, he doesn't even care. We are proud about the crap that we watch. 90 Day Fiancé. Now, here's the thing about 90 Day Fiancé is if you're ever at a loss, there are spin-offs of 90 Day Fiancé. So there's 90 Day Fiancé, which is, I think, the original one. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert, but it's where someone is coming from another country to do the 90-day visa. And then there's 90 Day the other way, where the person goes the other direction.
So they're in America trying to go to the European country or
maybe
African
not
country.
European, any other country.
Wow. Interesting.
Oh, and then there's 90 Day UK, which is great.
I've not seen that.
Oh my God. So some people in the UK are unintelligible to me. Like I need subtitles to know what they're saying.
For sure.
Which is amazing. And the other thing about UK is that it moves much faster. So if you have like less patience and you're trying to look for something new, I would say 90 Day UK.
It's probably, I think that would be right up my alley because I feel like my patience level.
You want to go through this story.
You're
like, I want to know what happens.
What's happening?
Yeah, there was one, I mean, I'm telling you, it's artful. Like the way that they're depicting, couples that aren't just, we're from Arizona. I feel like there's not a lot of diversity. I mean, I remember I went to law school and I told my friend, I was like, oh my God, it's so diverse here in San Diego. And she was like, bitch, please. But I was like, but what do you mean? Like, there's so many.
Because you're coming from Arizona.
Right. Because I came from Arizona. And there's just like really not that much diversity here.
True. So we definitely watch
all the trash TV.
We're Bravo.
Do you watch any lawyer shows?
I really don't.
None of them. Not even Law and Order SVU.
No, I don't.
What?
I feel like I already am doing the law. I don't want to do it in my free time too.
But I feel
did
like
watch Suits just for like a smidge. Someone said that I gave them Donna vibes. I don't even know who Donna is.
Who's Donna? Oh, on the show?
On the show.
Listen,
yeah.
I hate Suits, and here's why. It's because that guy is a lawyer without taking the bar. And that pisses me off. And also, I think that their like lawyer talk is not good.
Right. And that's where I get judgy on it.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
so judgy.
I can't escape because I'm watching this and it's not realistic per my standard because of the type of work we do.
No, it's way too bullshitty. Like, it's like you either have shitty lawyers writing it or like no lawyers. Like Law and Order SVU, that's good. You can learn some real stuff from that.
Okay, maybe I should watch that. So give me some of your final thoughts and advice on anyone out there who's facing career challenges. Because you've been through it.
Yeah, I've had all the jobs. I think that it helps to understand what things that you want from a job. Okay. Some people want to make a lot of money, and that's okay. Some people want to change the world, and that's okay. And some people want to work from home, and that's also okay.
In their pajama pants.
In their pajama pants, which, you know, I do a lot. So I would say just really be thoughtful about what it is that you want out of a job, and it exists. Like, we have people who are creating content for a job.
Right.
So I really feel like there's no limits on what you want to do other than the limits that you put on yourself. And so I think sometimes you don't always know what type of job you want. Thinking about what those intangibles are, what you want your life to look like, really can help you say, this is what I want. I will also say I have pros and cons, everything that I've done, and you can overthink something. There's only enough time in this life to live one life, and there are so many different ways to live it. So, I mean, I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but I would tear shit up if I get to come back. But there's only one life to live. So try to be open about what direction that can go in. And if you can think about some of those intangibles, you'd be surprised how many things are open to you. Like I say, as lawyers, that there's so many ways to utilize the skills that we have in so many different types of work. You don't have to be a lawyer. There were times where I wasn't actively practicing, but my skills as a lawyer, I think, were invaluable. Helpful. And so I think that being open to what that can look like is the best thing. And then, you have to have faith in yourself. It was interesting because I was recently asked to review a candidate for a judge appointment, somebody who I'd practiced before.
Super cool.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I love the lawyers who are part of that judicial committee to make sure that we have judicial officers who are competent and kind and thoughtful. And one of the things I said about this candidate was, the question was, what can this candidate do to be better? And I said, she can have more strength in her decision. I think sometimes we doubt ourselves.
Interesting.
And my feedback was, you're the judge. It's your decision.
Right.
If somebody wants to complain about it, heaven knows they'll do it.
Right.
But it's your decision. So really just, being frank about what your inventory of strengths and weaknesses are and how you can be of value to whatever that looks like. I mean, it's fine to be like, I want to make a bunch of money. I want to drive a nice car, or, I want to save the world. And you can sometimes do both, Right. So that would be my advice, is just be open and to what your capabilities are. I mean, again, it's crazy what people are doing now to make money. So you can do all kinds of things.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Look at you.
That.
I never would have thought you'd been a personal injury attorney.
Really?
Never.
Thought I was going to be the president's
Yeah,
wife.
I thought you were going to. No, yeah, which is awful to say. But you could, and you're great at it, and you're great with your clients.
Thank you.
And like, again, I send people to you all the time. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. You are available. I think that means a lot, And did you ever see yourself being a personal injury attorney?
No, I actually thought that the connotation I had with them was very much what I've extracted from them being advertised on TV.
Yeah.
It was like the lawyer with
ambulance chasers.
Yes.
They get a bad rap in our
do.
They ought not to, because they protect people,
exactly,
like really vulnerable people.
Right.
And they do that. And that's really where lawyers are heroes. I mean, I'm not a hero. I just play a role in a bigger piece. But what you're doing is really providing a voice for people who have been injured. And so,
but you do the same for mental health. You do the same for those victims.
Maybe.
No, you
but
definitely do.
Still different for you. I didn't think you'd be a personal injury attorney,
I never thought that either.
but you're doing a great job.
I thought, thank you so much, friend. I thought it was like.
What do you think you were going to do?
I thought I was going to be like an assistant attorney general.
Well, you were.
Like for career path, like
Okay.
prosecutor my whole life. I was always going to work for the state, for the government, DA, federal level.
You got to fight for the man, friend.
Yeah. So I always thought that was like the only way to get that gratification of helping people. And I never thought personal injury was going to give me that warm and fuzzy. And I just I didn't understand what that would entail. And so then when I did give it an opportunity and I did take a chance on it, I'm like, wow, this is the private sector's ability to help people. So it, again, is still rewarding, gives you that warm and fuzzy at the end of the day. People who are in need, you feel like you're helping them. So
and good for you, because there's a lot of dudes that do that.
Right. It's such a male-dominated field.
It's so male-dominated.
Yeah.
I think we used to call those guys the silver-haired foxes. I used to do medical malpractice defense for a hot minute, and it was always a bunch of white guys with like beautiful gray hair, fabulous suits. I mean, these guys. But then you walk in and you're like, no.
I know. It happens like that. If I'll go into a mediation and maybe there's like 3-4 attorneys involved.
Always dudes, right?
I'm like the only female, and they're like, "Are you the paralegal?"
You're like,
I'm
no.
not.
I'm the lawyer.
I am the attorney. I am her. She is me. Let's do this.
That's the best part about it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you never know where you're going to end up. There's so many different options, and you could change your mind anytime and do some other area of law. But finding where your niche is and what you like is pretty lucky. I mean, I feel pretty lucky.
Great. I agree with you tenfold. Well, Jen, I so appreciate you coming out and hanging out with me and chatting and
anytime telling
me all about
I'm always happy to come shoot the shit with you.
Thank
My
you.
little Gordi.
It's so fun chatting with you and learning about your background, things that I didn't even know, even though I've known you for 15 years.
I'm so proud of you, friend.
Likewise, I'm so proud of you.
We're all grown up.
We're grown up. Thank you for tuning in to Talk Legal to Me. Remember, you can listen to us everywhere you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple. And if you want to watch along, visit my YouTube channel at Lawyer Gordi. Until next time, stay informed, stay legal, and stay fabulous, besties.